Good evening, everyone. This evening we're here for an informational with Wendy Berry, and so the floor is yours. Nice. Is it?
All right, you're good. Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Welcome. Good evening. So we have two presentations to give you tonight. The first one is on Connecticut's cultural districts and the idea of letting you know what it means to form a cultural district and what the process is, and then seeing if there's any feedback, if there's any interest from the city about forming a cultural district. We are your liaison and your partner in that work. The second presentation will be on an update on our ARPA funding and arts and culture, and giving you an idea of where we're going and how it's going so far and where we are in the status. And then I'll introduce my colleague Sarbani Hazra, who is going to be co-presenting with me. So we're going to start with Connecticut cultural districts. So in 2019, the state of Connecticut adopted a legislative statute that allowed municipalities to be able to form a cultural district. The statute is that simple. Municipalities can form a cultural district. That's pretty much the extent of it. But this was driven off of the town of Ridgefield. The first selectman there wanted to mimic and model what was going on in Massachusetts, which is a very robust cultural district program in Massachusetts. There's 48 cultural districts in Massachusetts, maybe even more. It is a robust program. It's funded. It's been going on for 10 or 15 years, and so we wanted to think about having cultural districts in Connecticut with the 169 municipalities. So I was somebody who had been passionate about this in Connecticut, so I was part of the small steering committee that helped define and write the standards and criteria for forming a cultural district here in Connecticut. So I've been along since day one. So just a little bit about what a cultural district is. It is a specific area of your town or city. It's identified by the city itself or people in it. It has a number of cultural facilities, activities, and assets, both for-profit and non-profit. It is meant to be walkable, compact, and easy for visitors to recognize, a center of your cultural activities, and a place where community members congregate and visitors would come. You can include and think about parks and places where activities take place, not just actual facilities, but think about where First Friday takes place, the Howard T. Brown Park where festivals take place, and kind of identify it in terms of where activities are. So why establish a cultural district? Well, in 2018, when we began this process, this was because we were talking about creative placemaking and ways for towns and cities to really capitalize on the arts and cultural market and really think about how they can market themselves in a very competitive tourism environment and what would be the kind of goals around a cultural district. So really, it's a marketing opportunity to help market arts and culture and your attractions to visitors. It's able to kind of help you promote your artists, your entrepreneurs, your creative businesses, your downtown areas, or wherever your district is. It is meant to promote tourism and increase visitation, and I will tell you that in Massachusetts, the visitation was tracked, and they see increases and have tracked more visitation from the cultural districts that were established. It is meant to improve the quality of life for residents, strengthen the distinctive character of the community, create a plan for economic growth, and expand your tax base. It's also, in 2018 and 2019, it was very much and still is in alignment with Sustainable CT. This is an action item that you could get points for with Sustainable CT by forming one. So this is about creating a sustainable creative economy, and that means through municipal infrastructure. So this was in alignment with that. It's also meant to contribute to Connecticut's cultural assets. The idea is that Connecticut has a basket of cultural districts in the state that we can promote and market and bring people here. And then obviously it's to highlight your unique culture and history of your own community. Each cultural district is meant to be a separate, unique entity. It's not meant to be all the same. They're really meant to be distinctive of each one. So the first thing you would do is you would assess your readiness, and this is done by the municipality and the leaders in the city. You would just think about whether or not this is something you want. Do we need one? Do we want one? Do we have a historic district? Do we have an arts district? Do we have other districts that may align well with this? Do we have a center of activities? Do we have enough assets? I can tell you that in some of the towns we've worked with, some of them did not meet, in my mind, the criteria of enough assets to really, really think about having a cultural district. There's no absolute number. We just know in conversations with them, it would be really hard for them to establish an application, and we'll get to that in a minute. But so I personally know that Norwich does. You're fine. You've got enough assets. You would confirm your eligibility. I'll help you with that. And then you would let me know if you all were interested in forming one, We serve as your liaison to the Office of the Arts and DECD. So everything that's done through a cultural district goes through kind of our form and our version of shepherding this application to get state designation. So while you can form a cultural district as a municipality at any time and do nothing with it, if you want state designation, you have to go through the application process, in which I'm your conduit. And there's 8 organizations like mine across the state. We all have this responsibility. So the standards and criteria, in essence. The municipality, you all, City Council, must vote to approve or to have a cultural district. So you can do that in a couple ways, but in general, it's a City Council vote. You have to have a resolution. The municipality must be in Connecticut. This was an issue for Stonington, where Pawcatuck and Westerly share a lot of the same assets, and we couldn't extend it over into the Rhode Island line. It has to be in Connecticut only. It must meet the requirements of the definition. We'll get to that. Walkable, compact, all the things we mentioned before. It has to have defined boundaries. You need to literally draw a line on your map of where the cultural district would be, and if you have other districts, it's helpful to look at those maps and say, this is the line we already have. But in previous towns we've worked with, there are some residents who would love to see that we actually don't have lines, that we just make it inclusive and that we have this kind of fuzzy. No, you have to draw a line, you have to have a footprint, and you have to have a district laid out. It must be walkable and it must be accessible. It must have cultural facilities and assets, and this includes all the things that Norwich has. Bus stops, benches, bathrooms, all the kind of basic things that if visitors were to come here, parking, it's an enjoyable experience. There's some things we could do to add to that. It should have the public infrastructure and amenities, like I said. It must hold at least one community input session in order for people to learn about the proposed district before you vote. So we help facilitate that community input session. We actually are the ones that co-host it with you. We facilitate it, we do all the work on it, and we actually don't just do one. You're required to do one, we do 3. So we're gonna ask if you chose to explore this, we would do 3 community input sessions to make sure everybody who had an opportunity gets the opportunity to attend and give us the information. And what happens in those community input sessions are you learn about what are the goals from the people, what do people want to see in that district, where should it be, what should it include, what have been the barriers in the past. And all of those notes from those community input sessions kind of become the marching orders for the Cultural District Commission when it gets formed. We'll get there in a second. And don't freak when I say Cultural District Commission. We have a plan for that. It must pass a resolution. It must form a Cultural District Commission, but there's a way to achieve that. So this is not relevant to Norwich, but just so you do know, cultural districts can span more than one town or city. Mystic, this was the issue around Mystic in a few places, where it spans two municipalities. You can have more than one cultural district. New Haven is probably going to have quite a few. And towns like Stonington might want to have 3 as well. So you can have more than one. And you do have to do the inventory of cultural assets. We have quite an inventory that the Cultural Coalition keeps for you, so we actually know where a lot of your assets are, so we can help build that for you. You'll do a mapping exercise to really understand where those assets are and putting them on the map, and that includes, like I said, activities, annual festivals, those show up on that map. And that helps you define your footprint. Just helps you get an idea of where you and the residents think a cultural district should be. So in Massachusetts, it was really, really well funded. They had a program and a staff of people to help you form a cultural district, and it's a great program. We knew the first barrier in Connecticut was going to be asking a municipality to form another commission that was going to have potentially some vacant seats and be hard to get people on there. So we came up with kind of alternative pathways to getting there. One is you can create an entirely whole new board and commission called your Cultural District Commission. In New London, which has formed a cultural district and is in the process of getting their state designation, they actually let their EDC wind down at a point when it was the lowest in terms of commissioners serving on it. They actually morphed it into the Cultural District Commission, and they got rid of the Economic Development Commission and turned it into the Cultural District Commission. So they used an existing infrastructure, used 2 people to carry over, but they did kind of morph it into that, and now that serves as their Cultural District Commission. So you can create a whole new one. You can assign it to an existing board or commission and create an advisory council with a subcommittee that reports to the existing board or commission. We recommend your economic development. For you all, it would be a couple different choices of where you could have an existing commission oversee an advisory committee that reports to them. That is your cultural district committee. The third option is to literally assign it to an existing board or commission, but they have to meet the representation requirements, which I do not believe some of your committees would meet, and we'll talk about that. So in terms of representation of commissioners or committee members on this cultural district commission or committee, The first one, we just actually had a statewide discussion this morning about having a city, town, or borough representative. This was originally had an intention there. We're going to probably kind of change this bullet to, because most of the city, town, and borough representatives obviously don't serve on the commission, so they could we would have staff for it, but we're going to just kind of morph this one a little bit. This is an evolving program from Connecticut, and we've learned along the way, so we're still making changes to how this program is going to run as it grows. You do need to have a representative of a local cultural council or an arts council. For Norwich, it would be maybe an arts center, an arts hub, an arts gallery. We can help you find some of those. A cultural organization, historical society, a museum, an ethnic heritage organization. You need to have at least one artist that lives or works in the district. And this is where it's very hard to assign this to an existing commission because most commissions don't have an artist already on them. So that's just one of the kind of challenges with it. But you do need to have an artist, organizations that represent artists, a for-profit business like a gallery, a theater, and then local business and chamber of commerce. You have an amazing chamber here, so one of their representatives. And then that's the minimum seats. You can add and put in as many seats as you'd like. We recommend that you consider representatives from the tourism field, from historic preservation, from the leisure industry in terms of hotels, restaurants, and similar businesses, your schools or educational institutions, and economic and community development, obviously NCDC and things like that here. So you can make it as big as you want. In New London, they chose to add in a youth representative and a restaurant representative. They always wanted to have those two populations served and represented. So what would a cultural district commission or committee do? What is their responsibility? Well, they really are there to actually come up with a plan for it. What are the goals and objectives for that district? What's the management plan going to look like? What are the assets in the inventory? A marketing plan? What is the message? What are you trying to communicate? What's distinctive? What's unique? What is the tagline? And then think about how you can measure goals and successes for the district moving forward. So in order to qualify for the state's so in 2018 when we started this, the state was in a very different financial picture, and there was literally no offer of any money to help support this program. But what we do have is we have, at this point, in-kind support by the Office of Tourism, the Office of the Arts, and all of the regional organizations. So while you may not have a cash injection if you form one, the Office of Tourism will promote the cultural districts, and that's a pretty heavy marketing buy that you're going to get in support as an in-kind donation. We also know that Commissioner Lehman has been very supportive of cultural district formations as this rolled out. We obviously paused in 2020 when the pandemic hit and stopped even thinking about this in terms of this had just come out. But I will tell you that in the past year and a half, we have realized that cultural district formation could be one of the greatest kind of recovery tools you could have in your city. And one of the reasons for that is we've definitely realized, and it'll touch upon in the ARPA presentation, is the fact that we had very little municipal infrastructure for arts and culture in almost every municipality in Eastern Connecticut. ARPA funds had to kind of come through organizations like ours to be administered. If there was an arts department, cultural council, something else, your ARPA funds just would have gone right there, just like they did to public health, just like they did to human services, to parks and rec, and to economic development. In New London, they formed a cultural district last spring. They seated the commission in the summer. They got to work in the fall, and they're in the process of the application with a site visit coming up for their final designation. But the city allocated $500,000 to the Cultural District Commission to dedicate towards arts and culture in their city. We're doing one grant program for them, and the Cultural District Commission is doing another. It's a great way to build municipal infrastructure that we know this region and the state did not have pre-pandemic that we desperately need. So there's incentive around doing this, and Commissioner Lehman understands that, and obviously DECD, which is SHPO, the kind of leaders of DECD, Office of the Arts, Office of Tourism. So you'll be recognized if you get designation. My job is to make sure that your application for the state goes through knowing that you will absolutely be approved. In New London, we went through 4 iterations of their application. I verified all the information, added for a little bit more. We knew their application, I would be proud to present it, and now they're having that kind of final last step of having the entire DECD team come down to London for the site visit. So things you're going to get, though, you'll get promotion from the Office of the Arts, Office of Tourism, by the regional service organizations like ours, support in terms of technical support. We're here to help you with this if you wanted to go forward, and other investment opportunities as they become available. We have been pitching to the legislature to put some money aside for cultural district formations. Give these new commissions some seed money to get going with this work. We haven't had that success yet. This is what the process is, just kind of your letter from the chief elected official, a copy of that resolution, a map. We would help you with all of this, cultural assets, your list of municipal resources that would support it. So if you have existing programs, anything that would kind of tie in historic tax credits, anything else that you could say, our city cares about this district and we have other things in place. And then any other documents on historic district overlaps in terms of arts district. You have the Chelsea Arts District. That is a district in name only. And so you would include that and say, we'd love to kind of activate that if you chose to include that area in there. And then any other marketing materials that you've used in the past to promote the city. And we shepherd the application, we get it all ready, and we submit it when we think it's okay to go. The final piece is a site visit, like I said. So New London has theirs coming up in April. Stonington is about 2/3 of the way through their process and has not submitted the application yet. In April, we're going to have probably 6 to 7 DECD leaders come down, and they literally are going to do a little walk through the cultural district. They're going to talk to the commissioners, talk to the mayor, talk to economic development, and have a conversation about where this would be helpful, what they need, why they chose it, what the goals are, and anything else they want to share with the DECD team. So that will happen, and then you would get, hopefully, designation. Ridgefield was the first. It happened in 2021. Torrington just had their site visit last week, and they were officially, or at least unofficially, made a cultural district, so number 2. New London is teed up for number 3, and if Stonington can keep going a little bit more and not drag their feet, we might see them be number 4, but you can jump ahead. And then there's just, obviously Sustainable CT has resources, and then all of these offices are here to support you as well. So that is the process of how to form one and why and what it would look like. And then anything else beyond that, if you chose that you want, you can explore it and stop and say no. You could host a community input session, and if nobody comes, great, cross it off your list, you tried. Or you can just keep going all the way up until you get to a point where it's going to happen, or you say it's just not the right fit for us. So we're here to help with that. But that's cultural districts. Any questions on that? Yeah.
So my question would be, in your mind, what is the benefit of a cultural district here in a city like Norwich?
Yeah, I'll say, hands down, bar none, coordination. It really comes down to coordination and communication with the commission and a permanent infrastructure with the city's involvement. Our job is to not bring in you, we want to help to outreach to people who have never served on a commission before. We want people who are going to come in with perspectives that have not been in government involved before. So there's an opportunity to engage the community. But really, when you think about what goes in the city, the idea of just coordinating your resources and thinking about what the plan is. What's our message? What are we trying to tell people? What do we have going on in July? And having a dedicated team that is focused on understanding that pipeline and then coordinating it and saying, we're going to market the heck out of this in July, and we're going to do this, or we're missing this kind of business and we need it. But it's really the permanent infrastructure to pay attention to how you coordinate and leverage your assets in your city. And you need them. That's what you need. I mean, Sarvani's doing a great job right now and doing her role of kind of the early phases of coordination, but to have the city kind of engaged in this and overseeing it and permanently having it, I don't think you're going to have any kind of pushback on people's wanting to get involved. I think there's a lot of work here, and what I want to stress is this is not an easy lift. Your commissioners and volunteers are going to have to do a lot of work. We'll help them, but this is not a light load, right? This is an advisory council or commission that hopefully will have a big impact. But it is work. And so I think this is something where if you can just get people at the table, a new group of people and existing and institutional leaders to really think about the future and what they want and then start implementing and start growing down the metrics. We know from our history, you've heard this before from me, volunteer coordination does not work. I wish it did. But when you think, meaning on a large scale, right? If you want to volunteer to do your tourism for the city of Norwich, You're going to get a little bit of stops and starts, you're going to have a little bit of help, but the reality is you need people who are dedicated to this and a focus group that can really think about that long-term plan, right? And so while they're volunteers in the commission, I really do think that this is going to be funded at some point. I think there's money in the state right now. I think the state gets it. I think DCD gets it. And even if it's $10,000, $50,000 to start off, the idea is to get them funded so they can actually do the work.
And so I think one of the big messages that you're bringing across here is that one of the conversations we've been having is marketing all of the tools or things that we do within this city around arts, culture, tourism, kind of in a larger bucket that allows some of those other tools that probably several years ago we wouldn't have had to help us on a larger scale when it comes to promotions and advertising. And I know that, the Office of Arts has been wonderful, and this is a kind of something that they are prying at because of the opportunities out there that they have seen in other states, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that have blustered some of their festivals, their attendance of individuals visiting some institutions. So I mean, I see the benefit from that marketing point that is kind of an intangible that you can't really measure with a dollar.
It's collaborative marketing, right? Right now, your entities are competing with each other for visitors. They're competing for dollars, they're competing for visitors, they're competing for everything. The Cultural District will help at least define those. And keep in mind, if you have a map where all your assets are downtown, your footprint is downtown, it does not mean that you can't have an outside organization that's not in that footprint be connected to it. Think of it as spokes in a wheel. You have the hub, and then you have the spokes. And you have, maybe Slater is not in the downtown area, but it would certainly be, important to have connected to a cultural district. And who are driving in those places. So, but that kind of collaboration and trust building, it really comes from, showing that you can do things together, earning that trust, coordinating those activities. But I just, that is the issue, is we're trying to just get over this hump of competition into collaboration. And you need something to herd the sheep. Cats, sheep, whatever you want. Right? Lovely arts and cultural assets. Any other questions?
Members, anything else at this point? If not, we'll continue up. Alderman Singh.
Just a quick question. Thank you. So cultural district, you said you gotta mark it down, and is it like for just specific culture, or it could be inclusive, right?
It's meant
But
to
we
be.
just have to we have to define
Right. So the only thing
in
you
our
have to
resolution.
Right. The only thing you have to define is the actual geographical lines around it. Culture itself needs to be as inclusive as possible in terms of activities, and you want to think about those activities that take place in that district. That's why when you're doing your mapping and your inventorying, you want to think about those cultural pieces for different populations in the city. If the Hispanic community mostly spends activities in a certain park that's out in the district, you want to know where that park is. If that's where the Hispanic community is spending their time in terms of park activities, that should be considered as part of the cultural district. And you need to go around the city and say, where do our activities take place? Where do our populations come together? Where are the best places? Where are the places that we might want to migrate? But in the end, you're drawing a line around an actual footprint. I will say in I think it's in Torrington, Richfield is a very pretty simple footprint. It's just kind of almost like a circle, right? Yeah, I think it's in Torrington. It's an L. They actually did kind of two L's because they realized that up one street are some assets at the top of the street that are really anchors, and then down at the bottom. So theirs actually looks like an inverse T on their map. They thought about it. They realized they wanted them in there. They're going to have two pathways to walk around it, so it's walkable in terms of part A and part B. That they really took a good look at their city and said, those two at the top there, they need to be included. And they're going to infill along the way up there to help add more assets along the way to those big anchor institutions. Does that answer your question? No, but all cultures, all
And
populations.
is there any like visible signs to it?
Yeah, so this is where we kind of want the money for, right? So if you go into Massachusetts and you go into any cultural district, welcome to Great Barrington, a cultural district of Massachusetts. Big old beautiful signs that are artsy and creative and big at almost every major kind of intersection on the entranceway. That was part of our original plan, was to have the state at least pay for some signage. That was not supported originally. We wanted to get it going first, but I think there is certainly a case to be made that you'll be having from us to say, let's do the bare minimum here. 2 signs, right? Let's get them in, but it would be upon the city to figure out where and how. But right now, yes, you would want to have signs that say, welcome to Norwich, a cultural district of Connecticut, or whatever you want to say. And if you have a tagline that they've come up with, whether it be Rose City, whether it be something else, you'd want to include that.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point?
Good.
Okay. If-
All right, so moving on into ARPA. I want to introduce Sarvani Hazra. She's our Norwich Arts and Culture Coordinator, and she's going to join me for this presentation. And we're going to take turns. So just to kind of set the stage for this and why we are so grateful that the City of Norwich chose to commit such a large investment to arts and culture. We just got the new data from 2020, not 2021, but 2020. But this just gives you a little bit of clarity on where and how arts and culture have been so deeply impacted. Using inflation-adjusted numbers, the U.S. arts economy shrank at nearly twice the rate of the economy as a whole. Arts and cultural production fell 6.4% compared to 3.4% decline in the overall economy. Certain industries within the arts and cultural sector were hit especially hard. Example, performing arts presenters and performing arts companies. These are your performing arts venues and centers. That, performing arts, joined oil and drilling and exploration and air transportation as the steepest declining areas in the US economy in 2020. They have recovered in 2021 a bit, but we lost a lot of jobs. We lost a lot of talent. The great migration of jobs affected the arts industry tremendously just because of the gig environment. And here in Connecticut, we are still down, I haven't got the news numbers, but we are down 10,000 jobs. That's almost 20% of Connecticut's employment in the creative economy. We were 3.5% of Connecticut's economy in 2017. It's now 3.2. That's actually not that bad, actually. So I actually was surprised. It's a good number. But we have lost almost 10,000 jobs. And that is a small estimate. That doesn't include all of the creative economy jobs. That's mostly nonprofits. But it gives you an idea of where we are right now in terms of we're in the early stages of recovery. They were hit hard. I will tell you that COVID relief money and ARPA funds have been a godsend. The Save Our Stages money has been huge. A lot of money has come down to help these organizations survive. And they're sustaining, and they're staying, and they're hanging on. But that recovery really needs to come, they need audiences, they need people in the seats to really come out of this. So in terms of the overview, and I want to make sure I'm letting Sarvani speak when she's posted. You want to come up next to me? So obviously, City Manager John Simone presented his budget in July of 2021. In August, we created a webpage to get you in sync with the other municipalities. We are administering funds for 5 other municipalities in different ways for each of you, but a grant program is a core part of 4 of them. So we created a webpage, we did a registration and contact list, we began some outreach, we started hosting roundtables since October of 2021 to hear from the creative community. What do you need? What's going on? What do you need? How are you doing? How can we help? We've done 6 or 7 of those, I think, in Sarvani. And then we hired Sarvani as part of this to be the Norwich Arts and Culture Coordinator, and she began late December. And I'm going to let her hold it from here.
Thank you again for having me here. Okay, thank you. So I have been predominantly doing outreach the past few months. We've had 25 meetings and counting. And we also hosted a public art conversation via Zoom. We had about 47 participants who came or virtually, so that was wonderful. We had a great discussion there about where to put public art, what kind of public art the community wants to see. We also launched an arts and culture funding survey. And that survey essentially is asking arts organizations in Norwich, individual artists in Norwich, as well as creative businesses in Norwich on their funding priority needs, especially in the next 6 months to a year. So that has already been launched. So next steps is we will review the arts and culture funding results and kind of see, again, what the funding priorities are. So that'll help us shape our grant program coming up next month. And I am continuing to meet people and get in touch with organizations and individuals. So that is, again, part of our efforts. The other thing that's really important, especially for this grant program, is preparing ready tools. So that is, as everyone knows, there's over 38 languages in Norwich. So anyone who wants to apply, we want to make sure we're prepared. So whether it's interpreters or making sure the grant application is in various languages, different formats, right? So we're really, really thinking ahead and being prepared as much as we can to make sure this application, this process is as accessible as possible to any resident business in Norwich. We're also going to be sending a draft of our grant application to everybody on our ARPA list. So if you want to be on the ARPA list, please let me know. I will be sending it out. And again, this is to get community input. And if you are an organization that's eligible or an individual that's eligible, then you sort of are getting ready to go, you know what's there, or if there's a question that doesn't make sense and there's a consensus, then we can go back and change it before it's finalized. And then we will be also having a grant info session as well, where people will be sharing their project proposals, and let's say an individual artist needs a venue, or let's say a venue needs some programming. We can connect people together. That's the whole point. And again, the grant info session will be going over all the grant information and all that as well, and any technical questions we can assist with. And then I will be here, Wendy, Deb, we'll all be here to help people through the technical part of this process. So we're all in this together.
Thank you, Sarbani. She's done a great job of outreaching to a lot of organizations who we've never connected with before. And what she's asking people is, thanks for meeting me, but who else should I talk to? Who else can I meet with? I know, Singh, you just connected with some people. We need to make sure that we're doing our best so that we don't hear when this grant program goes out, I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. What do you mean you had funding? I didn't know about it. We want to make sure we've done our darndest to make sure that it's very aware and out there and that we can get everybody in. So how is it shaping up so far? And I hope that explains why we've taken our time on this. And keep in mind, we're doing the grant programs for other cities. We don't need 6 different grant programs. We want one grant program. It's going to be unique to your city, but there's no reason for us to have one for every city. So we're really thinking about all the issues in all the towns, with Norwich being the biggest. But it's why it's taking us time. And I think I've expressed to the mayor and to the city manager, we've not had any one organization say to us, you better get that grant program out, we're getting ready to die. Nobody has come to us and said they need a lifeline. They're all hanging in. Funding just came, a nice big round of funding from Connecticut Humanities was doled out in December and January. That was the $30 million from the state legislature. That hit the streets in December. It was a great Christmas present for organizations. Those were big dollars, and it was general operating support. So most organizations capitalized on that. It was the largest grant program Connecticut has ever had. And the most inclusive, by the way. Arts, culture, humanities, tourism, you name it, everybody was eligible for that, with a minimum $5,000 grant award, even for an all-volunteer organization. So that's why we're taking our time. So we've, throughout the discussion with the creative committee, we realized we wanted to do 2 rounds of funding. That just in case we missed somebody in the first round, we wanted to give them a second round opportunity so that they had a chance. So the first round is going to come out soon, and you'll hear that in a second. We're looking at probably no more than a total of $100,000 of the $500,000 for the first round, so small grants up to $10,000. And then the larger grants will wait till kind of the fall and winter, with the bulk of the funding going there with larger grant awards potential. The discussion we've had with the creative community was around how we're going to use this money, and it came down to, let's do 2022 to get your stuff together. What do you need to get your business back whole? Is it staffing? Is it programs? Is it governance? Is it activities? Is it capital improvements? What do you need to kind of get yourself in a good position? And then in 2023, let's welcome the heck out of the whole state to come back to Norwich. And let's get ourselves and our best foot forward. If you're having an event, let's help you get the biggest headliner you can get. Let's make sure your building is in order. Let's make sure you have staff. Let's make sure you have great programs. So 2023 is the year we're going to ask, kind of a campaign of welcome back, come back, whatever it may be. We haven't figured out. It's been very controversial about that, about how we're going to make that campaign. But the idea is that gear up in 2022, stabilize, get yourself together, and then really use the money in 2023 to really put your best self forward in 2023, and we'll put money towards marketing and promotion as well. So that's how we're structuring it right now. This is tentative. We're looking at grants being available for nonprofits, for-profit creative businesses, and individual artists for arts projects. And these are the things, and I also wanted to mention, it's also for projects, so arts projects like public art and things like that. So staffing, programs, capacity building, capital improvements, marketing and promotion, professional development, all the things that we heard them say they needed money for. We've included that. So here's we paused for a couple weeks when we had a great conversation with the Women's Business Development Council under SBA. And they called to ask us, what can we do to help you all with the creative community, because we know how hard they've been hit. And we mentioned we were doing this grant program, and we ended up coming out of this phone call with the beginnings of an idea that very quickly solidified with many partner organizations, that we're going to incentivize professional development support. So many organizations, there's a new normal in the new world with how to operate the new normal, and there's a lot of organizations and businesses who could either use a back to basics, a little support, a little help, maybe a refresher. And so we know that professional development, workshops, classes, best practices are always a good idea for any business. So we're thinking that at this point we're going to add in, and you could opt in as a grantee. We want to opt in and say, we would like an additional either 1,000 to 1,500, we're not sure yet. And if they opt in, they're going to agree to become part of a one-year cohort and receive classes and workshops, and we're subsidizing that as part of this, to give them the support they need to make sure that that investment is well spent, and they get whatever they need to make sure that they can achieve whatever their goals are for that grant application. It'll be optional. They have to use it for, we're going to figure this out as we go along. We're building this airplane as we fly it. There could be one-on-one consultations. There could be, we're thinking about tracks for nonprofits and for-profits and individual artists. And so Women's Business Development Council has agreed to offer a whole litany of their courses, so financial fundamentals, business plan, marketing plans, how to use TikTok in the new world, all whatever you can imagine. Assets for Artists has also agreed to come on. That is a professional development company that actually specializes in artists, teaching artists best practices in professional development. Artists will love to work with them. They already do. We've worked with them for 6 years. The Office of the Arts is committed, and Connecticut Humanities is committed. And then we mentioned it over to Kevin at NCDC and talked about how the Global City Norwich co-work lab or work lab could also be an option for people to sign up for. But essentially, we're going to say, if you want a grant and we want you to have one, we want it to be a great investment, we want you to have the support you need to succeed, and so we're going to offer you and subsidize for your board and staff to attend these workshops and trainings at a minimum level, and hopefully that will help them achieve whatever goals they're trying to achieve. Sarbani?
Thank you. As Wendy mentioned, our first round of grants will be, you can apply for up to $10,000, and this is the tentative timeline. So we will be rolling out our intent to apply form next week, March 28th, and that's just a short online form with a description and sort of a funding amount just to kind of get the ball rolling. And then our grant application will open next month, April 25th will be the opening date. And then we will close applications May 16th. And then grant awards are planned to be announced on June 1st, so it's ready for summer and summer programming and early fall. And then our second round of grants will be up to $25,000, and we're still working on the timeline with that, but that'll be fall, winter deadline for spending 22-30.
So I think you all know that our office is located in Boundary 66. So Kevin Brown's office is just around the corner from me. So we get to have a lot of time in the coffee room and when we're walking down the hallways with each other. If you've ever been to his office, you've seen his whiteboard. I have a very similar one. His is crazy. Mine's not that crazy, but we love to brainstorm. And so Kevin and I have been in conversation. Part of the public art roundtable that we held online, the community conversation, was helping the community members tell us where public art could go. And they helped us map, and they helped us provide information. And what we've done is we've specifically sat down with Kevin and said, where are you focusing your energy? Where can we add value? How can we help? If you're looking at these two streets and whatever else you're doing, how can we make those streets even better? How can we think about what you don't have? And so a lot of conversation's been happening. So recently, Kevin and I had a conversation, and I was asking about the Vanilla Box program. He's rolled out his grant program, as you know. And we started talking about, well, if you're talking to businesses who are putting in spaces here or growing or starting, it would be great if they spent some of the money on artists and graphic designers and maybe put a mural in there or maybe use some video or photography for social media content. But I think there's a way your businesses would benefit from some money from us as well. So what we came up with was an idea of kind of a 1%, and you're going to hear this a little bit more as we kind of move through this percent for art piece. But we've committed up to $25,000 of our funds that will be given out to his grantees with an optional part if they want it, to use for things like this. So this is really a way of kind of making sure that we're all thinking about how you can use your art sector to benefit your business, but also how our dollars can help Kevin's dollars, and that we're all working together in terms of knowing who these businesses are. So I'm excited about that. And then we've just started kind of basically talking about this kind of percent for our program that could potentially be for a future project for Norwich. And the idea being if you have a developer come into town and they want to develop a building or redevelop, can they put aside, or can we help to incentivize where they use some of that money for some sort of public art? So imagine walking into the lobby of an apartment building that has just the most kick-butt mural on there that is by a signature Norwich artist, makes the space unique. Maybe there's cool lighting, but something is done in the building, inside or outside, to really make it unique and distinctive around the arts and some sort of public art. And this is done all over the United States, all over the world, so this is not new. But we just started kind of talking about what buildings are in development, what buildings are looking to be rehabbed, could this be something developers would be interested in? And so we're just going to kind of keep on exploring that. And that was an abrupt ending, I'm sorry. So we're going to keep the conversation going with the creative community, with NCDC, Global City, and then all the people that Sarbani's connected with. But essentially, that's the rough outline of where we're going. You're going to see us roll out a grant program in coordination with New London, with Stonington. Other cities, just so you know, that we're managing money for, North Stonington, their creative community has opted to buy something together that the town will buy. They've actually identified that they would like the town to purchase a portable stage for them. And they think that they all rent portable stages for their events, and it would be great if the town could own it and manage it and store it and deliver it. They can all save on that pretty expensive cost for renting a portable stage. We're going to increase the bar and the quality of it by getting a higher quality one that they could rent. And the town North Stonington really does want to have more artistic events and festivals to bring their community back together. This will allow more activities to take place. So they've gone a different route in North Stonington in terms of collective purchasing that I think is really unique and interesting. New London is doing small arts projects with us, so we'll be doing up to $10,000 there as well. Same timeline, but specifically for arts projects. And then their city is also focusing on coordinating with property owners and artists to think about vacant spaces and underutilized spaces. So every city is doing something different. We're just here to support you, but we listen to your creative community. This is the response to what we're hearing. If you have other ideas for ways we can add in more leverage, we'd love to hear them. But otherwise, that's where we are as of today. Any questions?
Thank you, Wendy. In the meetings you and I have had, I've appreciated the fact that you're driving a sense of collaboration can be a benefit to a community that in the past has not, or has really stayed within their own silos. And your efforts here are to really see that those silos are not as important and that collaboration rises to another level. And I want you to know I appreciate that very much. Can be a tough group.
We will require it in round 2 funding. It will be required.
Correct.
They have to have 3 entities on minimum 3 entities on an application. They will not be funded if they're not collaborating. Mm-hmm. On the first round of applications, we have a rubric to score them on their applications. They won't be penalized for not collaborating, but they will be rewarded in points for collaborating. Mm-hmm. We will always stress, and part of Sarbani's job is to help connect those dots and say, hey, did you know you're doing the same thing as them? One of the reasons why we want to share, in the intent to apply, we're going to ask for a 2-sentence description of what they want the money for. And we're going to publicly share them. We want them to see who their competition is, but also who their potential collaborators are. We want to build this kind of trust and confidence of know what you're up against, but also know where you missed some opportunities. So that's part of our goal. So thank you for seeing that.
Thank you. Questions, members? Alderman Singh.
Just a quick one. So, of course, our intentions are to be inclusive and everything, but is there any safeguards or incentives for public art to be inclusive, or do you see any barriers that could be removed?
I think the biggest barrier we're going to face are applicants or people who have never applied before, don't trust the system and don't understand the system, who don't know what a grant process looks like. And that can be through a couple things: languages, ease, comfort, requirements, reporting requirements. Because these are federal dollars and city dollars, we have very high reporting standards on this. If this was our grant that we ran 2 years ago in relief form, it was the simplest application you can imagine. We knew who they were, we knew they needed the money, we made it easy. We know we don't have that liberty here. But I think the barrier is going to getting new applications are going to be the challenge, I think, right now. And the collaboration part is, it's a big carrot right now, but it has traditionally not been a strong suit for the city. So we're going to try to so that's why we use tentative guideline. If we see that there's a better opportunity for a longer time to help instill a little bit more collaboration before we finalize things, we're going to dig into that and take some time. If we see a lot of redundancy in programs, we're going to stop and pause and say, do you guys see what you're doing here? And try to work with them. So I think it's going to be the trust and kind of collaboration just not being easy here. And then just the simple, how do we get the new ideas, the new people, the new organizations to come into a process that is quite complex and not easy to do as a grant applicant myself. So I think those are the two biggest. Sarah, Brenda, do you have anything to add with that?
No, those are, yeah, the main two.
Okay. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's I think the issue.
Alderman Wilson.
So one, I want to thank you for, I think you took the first step in the collaboration, exhibiting it, working with NCDC, Global Cities, programs that already exist. I think you've taken kind of the expectation already to another level. So I think as the individual kind of laying out the program, you've done an excellent job of putting something together that shows, listen, we're kind of all in this together, this recovery process together. But I think one of the other things to take away from this is, as we're focusing on bringing back that sector of arts, culture, and tourism, the thought about jobs, so I think that part where you talk about up to 25,000, working with NCDC on the vanilla box opportunities, shows the shift also to the economic development nature of our community. To show that, arts and culture, these artists, these business, these organizations have an area or a place here in Norwich to help not only Gloucester from a vision spot, but also from an economic driving spot to developers and business owners that are looking to even spruce up their businesses. So I think the understanding that this is bigger than just programming, events, and the things that organizations are used to doing, but this is a way to not only collaborate, but reinvigorate and rejuvenate collaboration from a creative standpoint, which I think is something that is necessary in the region. But I think you guys taking the first step, having a detailed plan, this is probably the most detailed plan I've seen yet, but it's important that, individuals are seeing, you're not just putting something together to put it together. This is something where you're also already thinking of next year, where we go. So I applaud you guys for that sense that this is not just something put together, but that we're thinking futuristically where we want to see arts and culture go, but also the jobs piece is important. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for those comments. I know we've worked hard on this, and not just for your city, but for really the region and many other municipalities. In other places in the nation, including Connecticut, they parked their ARPA dollars so quickly in arts and culture, they get it. New Haven put $1 million day one into arts and culture. They knew exactly they need to have $1 million of their ARPA funds go into arts and culture. They have a cultural department of arts. They knew that they know how vital it is. Let me just make sure I'm stressing before we close out how vital this is and how important this is to me personally, to our organization professionally, and to the city. We've had our office here since day one that the organization was formed. This has been in Norwich, always in partnership with NCDC. We know that the city has had a history of stopping and starting in terms of funding. And it's gone well sometimes, and it's not gone well others. We know the risks that you all have chosen to take by investing it and confiding and kind of giving it to us as a administrator for this. But I know that if we blow this, I know that if this doesn't do what it's supposed to do, my reputation is at stake, my organization's reputation is at stake, and the creative community here is at stake, and this city council or future ones will not do this again. Our goal is to make sure this goes well, that you see the ROI, that you see the economic and community development come out that other organizations and cities and states do, and that all of a sudden it becomes just normal to fund arts and culture every year, all the time, with sustainable funding, in whatever the level that may be. But we know that this is a pivotal point for us, and we take that very seriously. So I appreciate you hearing our plan. I appreciate your patience as we work on this plan, but we aim to get this right and have it be a huge benefit for the city and really come back and report some really great, exciting kind of developments from this in the future.
Go ahead, sir.
One last thing, I think the other part too is between both presentations, both this and on the cultural districts, I think one of the other pieces that, not only for the audience here, but also individuals that may not be here, is that we're not starting over from scratch. Both ideas that, you've presented, we can take existing structures and still run with them. And I think that's the other big piece here, is that we're not starting with something that doesn't exist. We're taking what we have and making it work for the time now. Something that may not have been dormant for 10 years, we're making it fit the 2022 year and beyond. So I think that's the other part that I want to thank you for doing.
So thank you.
Other questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Thank you.